Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Just give a shout if I don't speak loud enough. So my name is Anne-Sofie Vandevelde. I work as an advisor in the cabinet of the Minister of Digital Agenda, Alexander De Croo. So, and I'm going to explain to you tonight what our new federal open data strategy is that we approved this summer. I have to warn you, I'm a lawyer, so if you have too technical questions, I might not be able to answer them, but I'll do my best. So,
which one is it? Is that yours?
Okay. Okay, so as I just said, this summer we approved with the federal government a new open data strategy for Belgium. This strategy is supported by a draft law, which is still in the process of being approved, but the strategy is already there, so we are already trying to get that going. And so what I just going to explain briefly so that we all know what we're talking about. So the government data that we want to make open is first of all the data that is being collected in the context of public tasks. So it means that every data government services generate, because it is taxpayers' money, we think that it should be made open again for the public, for companies to use and make creative things with it. Then the only data we are talking about is data that falls under the publicity of administration. So certain data that cannot be made public for security reasons, other reasons, or because it can only be asked by someone who has a personal interest in the data does not fall under the scope. Thirdly, the question of intellectual property. Is there intellectual property not resting with the government, but maybe with third parties? In that case, the data cannot be made open. There are also privacy issues. So, of course, privacy-sensitive data will not be made available for reuse. So we've been very thoughtful about this issue of privacy, but I'm going to say a bit more about that later. And then finally, there are some exceptions for instance, libraries, musea, and certain archives that don't fall under the scope of this new plan and framework. So why did we adopt this federal strategy? The first reason is the economy. I wanted to cite the study from the European Commission, but I'm a bit too afraid to do that now. But I can explain how the figures for Belgium were calculated, and it's actually just Agoria who used the calculation methods of the European Commission and just transposed it to Belgium. So, but politicians always like to use figures and promise economic growth, so we are happy to use these figures because we do believe that there are benefits coming from open data. Then the second reason is for citizens, because we believe open data fosters transparency, fosters democracy, participation. It allows citizens to have accurate information about what government is doing, evaluate policy decisions, because of course, it's very difficult for citizens to take account of all what government is doing based on all these huge amounts of information and figures. No one can actually understand something. A normal citizen can't really have the time to analyze everything. So we also believe that by opening up figures like, for instance, budget, expenditure, there will be really added value from applications, analysis that are made about how taxpayers' money is spent, and let people interact on the basis of this correct information that they get from these data. And then finally, government. The added value for government is obviously because if governments are forced to open up their data, they are also incited to improve the quality of this data, because that is one of the main reasons we always hear why government agencies are afraid of open data, is because they are actually ashamed about the bad quality of their data. So we think by opening up and by allowing feedback from users to the government, we will also improve the quality of this data. And government agencies are also supposed to structure their data in a more efficient way. So then obviously there is the open data barometer, where we see that Belgium is barely in the top 30 of countries that have a good score on open data, and we are even under Russia, so we are a bit surprised to see that we still have lessons to learn regarding openness from all of these countries. And then also in the European Digital Economy and Society Index, we see Belgium is ranked 16th out of 28. So also that is below average, and that is something that we want to change. So now the strategy that we adopted, it's I would say 15 action points that are centered around 5 key blocks, I would say. The first one is that we really made a shift now of principle. We go from a situation where openness was the exception to a situation where openness should be a rule. The second one is accessibility. We want to make the data as accessible as possible. Third, the quality of the data. Then, of course, making sure that all government agencies are with us with this new open data strategy, that they all participate. And then the promotion of the use of this data. So first of all, open by default. How are we going to do this? So what we introduced in this strategy is a comply or explain principle. So it means that a government agency has to make its data available for reuse when people ask for it. So open is the rule. A government agency can no longer refuse, except in specific situation where, as I explained in the beginning, there might be privacy, security issues, or intellectual property rights. Then the second thing is we want a proactive release of the data, so we don't want government agencies to wait for people to ask for their data, because first of all, they cannot ask for things they don't know that exist, and second of all, it's hard also to develop new ideas, new applications from data if you haven't seen it. So we believe that by making it available, new applications will follow. Then the third one is we want to, of course, we know that not every data set can be made available from the beginning. So the question is, what are the priority data sets? So there are some sets that are definitely prioritized, that are also identified by international institutions and such. But for the rest, the data for which there is demand is going to have to be opened up by priority. And then a fourth one is transparency through an open data inventory. So we asked all government agencies to make a list of what data sets they have, and by when they intend to release it, and under what formats they expect to be able to do it. It's going to take some time to make this inventory, but the purpose is to have a transparent system where we can follow up what government agencies do, and also where citizens and companies can find information on the data that is in the possession of governments. So then the second strategic axe, I would say, is the one of accessibility. First of all, the thing we want to get rid of is the fact that there are currently there's one data portal actually, but there are two government websites on open data. So that is an old conflict of Belgian competing administrations. So that is definitely confusing, and that is something we want to get rid of as soon as possible. So this single portal that we decided that we want should be available by January. The data sets will not be very much improved compared to what we have now, but it will be a first step in the good direction, just the fact of having one single portal. Then the second one is licenses that are simple. What we approved in our strategy is that the CC0 license should be the one to be used by default. So there again, we introduced a comply or explain principle, meaning that if a government wants to impose conditions or use other types of licenses, it has to explain why. This is also the intention of getting a lot of data sets out of the gray zone that Peter also talked about. And then last one is continuity. So each government service will be responsible of keeping its data sets up to date, and also will be asked to motivate if it stops producing certain data for a certain reason. And then the quality of the data. So here we inspired ourselves with the 5-star data model of Tim Berners-Lee. So ranging from 1-star data to 5-star data that is available in a format that is easy to reuse, and that also can be easily referenced to using identifiers. Of course, this is something that can be done from one day to another, but the thing is, government agencies should put at the disposal already now what they have under the formats they have it, and then it's the purpose of improving the data further and further, but this is the goal that we have in mind. Then the second one is strengthening the authentic sources. So the purpose is that the data that is made available by the government agency that is the one collecting and managing the data. So we are this should improve the quality of the data, and also reduce errors that might exist in duplications of other databases of the real authentic sources. And then a feedback mechanism. As I said, it's a purpose that the community can give feedback on the quality of the data, errors that there may be. So governments shouldn't be afraid to open up and get feedback on the quality of their data. So there is one task force within government who is going to manage this. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, a question about the previous slide. How do you define an authentic source at federal government?
An authentic source is the government agency that is responsible for the collection of the data, that the one that gets it from.
Any sort of law that they
No.
are it's
No.
like a knowledge, because the knowledge is actually
No. But there is, it's in any case, it's not in the open data law, but it might be in another one. There might be a concrete definition. Probably there is, but it's the one that gets the data directly from the source. We've assigned this task force within government who has to make all of this happen. It's the government service of administrative simplification, and also the federal ICT government service. They have to work together to form a task force and get all the government agencies moving on open data, and also provide them with support and all the technical and legal questions they may have. And then each government service has to appoint someone who is responsible for the open data policy of the specific agency. That's what we call the open data champion, and he's responsible for approving a plan for his own agency to get started with open data. And then obviously there is a role also for promotion, communication towards the public, towards companies, make sure that we show what data is available, and also to government agencies, showing them the value of open data. And then Peter also talked about the issue briefly, the question of what is the economic value that we expect from certain data sets to be released. So there, this task force will also be asked to calculate potential economic benefits, and we hope that this is going to help us to convince government agencies to open up their data. So a concrete timeline on the next steps, what we are doing in the coming months. So the strategy and the law are approved. Now the task force is up and running, and we hope to have a first part of the inventory of data sets from government by the end of this year. Then there will be the single web portal beginning of January. I would say half January this should be ready. That, of course, there's still the law to be approved, because now everything I explained is the principles, like the large theoretical principles that we approved in our strategy, but everything has to be clearly defined by law. So that is also the implementation of the European PSI directive, and it should be approved by the Parliament beginning of next year. Then we are going to work on the licenses, because it's not defined by law. It's in a royal decree that we still have to approve. And there we're going to define the rules for which licenses have to be used, in what cases government agencies have to explain why they don't use these kind of licenses, and all these kind of details. And then there will be, once all the rules are really concretely defined, we're going to do a campaign with government services to explain them really practically how they should get started, and what they have to do, and that will be also for the second quarter of 2016. So this is it. I hope it's been useful, and if you have questions, don't hesitate.
Go ahead.
Okay. So you mentioned data to facilitate open spending, so to provide transparency rather than expert on what's going. Yeah. Do you have a time frame?
No. No, unfortunately not.
Do you have an estimate on when you could
I really want to be very careful with that, because it's really going to depend from how I have to say I haven't been in contact with this specific person or the responsible for this government agency, so I don't know if they're really almost ready to get started with this, or if it's really not out of the question. So
if I want to be kept up to date with the open spending context, how do I stay up to Twitter, or to the comments?
Yeah, I suppose that will be through the new open data portal once it's there. But I also have to warn. So the law that we have to approve, it's going to take a few more months at least, and only by then these rules that I just explained come into force. And I think it's only then that the government agencies will start to think about it. But from then on, you can ask things, and if they refuse, you will have to receive a good explanation.
I have a question. First, me. No, Anne-Sofie, is there a country that inspires all this work? Is there a country that's more forefront of how it should be done that you would like to follow?
Well, we took some elements from the strategy from Denmark, some elements from the UK, but actually there's not one in particular, but maybe I'm interested to hear about the US tonight, so.
I also have a question related to time. It's of course obvious that this takes time to get organized in a decent way. But basically, I understood that we can expect a sort of empty box, which is the platform in 2016, in the beginning of 2016. And how do you expect it will continue? Will we have like 10% of the data realistically until 2019, and then have 90 or 80% in 2020?
Yeah, I know it's not very nice to announce an empty box, but it's really already been a huge thing to I would say mediate between these agencies to get that thing going. For the data sets themselves, I would say from the moment the law comes into place, you can ask data, the government has to give it, but I don't have an idea in what format they're going to give it to you. But from the moment the law is approved, you can ask what you want and it cannot be refused.
Forgive my ignorance, so I hear you talking about this federal program, and most of the data that I know about comes from Flanders, Brussels, Wallonia. Are there plans to maybe sort of align between the communities and maybe have, for example, Flanders have Wallonia with their electric lights or stuff like this?
Yes, well, in any case, of course, the portal is going to be linked to the portals of Brussels, Wallonia, Flanders, and Europe. Then also regarding the licenses, we plan to coordinate with the Brussels, Walloon and Flemish government to make sure that everything is as much as possible in line. And then once everything is operational, I'm sure we're going to work together. But for now, the main work has been to get this law approved, which is quite technical. And so really all our efforts have gone into that. And actually we have been in quite a rush because it's the implementation of a European directive that used to be, that actually had to be implemented this summer already. So we're already late. And yeah, it's a pity. It's something that has been on the desk of the government for a few years. It hasn't been a priority. Now that there's a Minister for Digital Agenda, all of a sudden this is important. So we're trying to move as fast as we can.
Two more questions. Thomas?
Well, it's kind of goes down to this question. It's basically if you want to study something on Belgium, on the whole Belgium, but you have actually the data sets come from different regions, you want them to be at least a bit aligned. Okay, that's their responsibilities, but do you intend on providing some platform to try to stimulate collaboration between those services?
Yeah, actually, we haven't really thought about a really institutional platform, but in any case, on a political level, there's going to be some coordination, and I know for a fact that the people that are working on it within FIDIC, they have regular contacts with their colleagues from the regions, so expect that they are going to make sure that that is in order.
Peter?
You were reluctant to talk about the metric, about the calculus, but I just want to say you shouldn't be shy about that, because I really like the plans, because I've heard a little bit more already. And I really want to say already to this audience that the calculus is not going to be just broadly about open data in general, about how much revenue it can make, but it's about specific data sets. For instance, if you would open up a certain data set, how much would it boost, how much money would the government lose, and how much would the government make? And I really find it a very good exercise, and I like that point very much. Then another thing that I saw in the presentation about the same presentation but of beyond the press from Veden, he said that there's going to be an open data champion within every administration. That's also something for this audience. We will be able to speak to every administration. There will be a contact person on open data. We will be able to spam them like, open up your data. This is great.
Yeah.
So, I just would like to tell you, like, it's awesome. Just be more
So we still have more time. It's 1:45, so we have some more time for questions. So let's. So pleased to have you here. So there is a question over there.
Yeah, I have a question somewhere in between your guidelines and the unique website you are publishing. Do you have also a clear vision on how you are going to interface between users and those data sets? Also, you are going to index or codificate each data set, and how you are going to, make it as intelligible as possible to have an overview and to make people try to get what is behind what kind of data for the start, because it's going to be a huge mess if you don't have this kind of plan in mind.
Yeah, I have to say that that is something that we leave to the experts of the government, and that we trust them with, that they have a correct vision, and of course they're going to present us a prototype of what they are working on. That will be, I think, that's planned for December. But yeah, definitely me as a lawyer, I can't really tell them how we ask them for something that is as user-friendly as possible, as well-structured as possible, and also it's the purpose is that it is also going to be in line with what Europe is going to do, and that they're going to make public in early next year. So we are going to have our portal already earlier, but the purpose is then to gradually adapt also to the European one.
Okay, but before being an ergonomic question, it's also an organization question. So, is there a standard, unified, or legal codification for each data set? If you have several regions, several counties, several provinces going to have to gather all their data all together, is there something already foreseen, black and white, to codificate, to segment all this?
Legally, in any case, no.
Okay. We have a question from Steven at the top.
So I'm a project manager for the Belgian arm, and responsible for the internal data platform, corporate data, also not organization data. You have about 1,300 data sets. I think 40% of them can be internal. So I guess we can be very big in the Belgian audience, especially regarding contracts and stuff like that. That's definitely a possibility we have today. The problem at our side is that the higher management doesn't see the added value of open data. So that's a challenge for you to solve quite quickly. But I have a remark regarding the economical value of open data. Maybe we should look at open data from an economic standpoint. In the United States, the police had lots of abuse of especially black people and other minorities, and open data actually helped to clearing that up. So the social value of open data is also something you need to take into account when discussing the value of open data.
Yeah, that's actually also what I wanted to say. There's this economic value, of course, but for us, for a large part, it's also a matter of transparency and democracy, and I think it's going to allow for change and better information of people and empower people. So that is regardless of the economic value, and I'm sure that there is, but it's hard to quantify. But why we are so enthusiastic? Maybe if I haven't been enthusiastic enough, we are very enthusiastic about this project.
Peter,
you had a slide with 5 or 6 categories of open data. One was health, and then there were a few others. But you went by pretty quickly. Can you show that one again?
It's the one in the barometer, you mean?
It was near the barometer, but it was just for Belgium. It was the categories of linked open data that you would try to open up.
I don't have it. No, actually, I don't.
I saw it there somewhere.
It would have been interesting, but...
Do you have a better question, Rita?
Well, it was around the middle of the slide deck. No, not that one. No, not... Yeah, slow down. You just missed it, huh? This one.
No, actually, that's the e-government index from the European Commission, and these are the criteria that they measure to determine how high a country is in the ranking on e-government. And you see that because we have such a bad position on open data, I would say that we are low in the rankings on e-government at the European level.
Well, thank you very much, Anne-Sofie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I hope you like this presentation. This presentation was held in the Brussels Data Science Community Meetup. If you want to know more of when these meetups are taking place, just check the link below. Bye-bye.